Good evening to everyone. Glad to see everyone that was able to make it out, and hopefully it be worth it. So some of what I wanted to study on this evening was trying to look and think about the devil a little bit more. Brother Riley brought a good lesson Sunday. This is kind of goes along with it, I guess you could say. There was a scripture that's always stood out to me that we've read numerous times, but if you would turn over to Job, and that's where we'll kind of get started on this. Job chapter 1 and verse 7. I'm sure that everyone's familiar with it. But what I want to try to look at is, and this first part is the sneakiness and the cunning of the devil. And just how slick he is. We knew that from the Garden of Eden whenever he was talking with Eve. But this passage here amazes me. Verse 7, And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. So technically he didn't lie to God. He hadn't been telling him everything he'd been up to, because we know what he's been up to. His job was to deceit. But just the craftiness in his words, and God already knew what he'd been up to. He already knew every place that he had been. But the devil has got to know that the Lord already knew these things. But in his answer to him, it was a very sly answer that told the truth in a lot of ways, but it was a shady answer. I think, he didn't divulge any more than what he had to. And we know that by this reading, a lot of it jumps out at me that the devil was subtle. And the definition of subtle was difficult to detect or to grasp by the mind, analyze, not immediately obvious or comprehensible. Much of his works that he does, and that we'll study a little bit more on, he comes in a shadow, in a form that we don't see coming. He's subtle. He's also a very deceitful person, and he is out to deceive us, which is give a mistaken impression, fail to admit. So he was a little bit had a little bit of deceit in his answer, I feel like, to the Lord. He didn't divulge everything. If you would, turn over to Ephesians chapter 2. Ephesians chapter 2. Ephesians 2 and 2. Says here, Wherein in time past you walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. Whenever I read that, I get the grasp of what it's saying, but in the breakdown of it, when it starts talking about to the prince of the power of the air, well, in the Strong's, when you look it up in the Greek, to breathe unconsciously. So what I'm gathering from this is that so many things that come into our lives and the way that he works, so many times he is present and he is giving us thoughts and encouraging us, and we don't even realize it. And as it says there, the Greek for prince was a first in rank of power, the chief, the magistrate. So he has the rule over all of these suggestions, all of these things that can lead us astray. And then what I'm getting at is, I had a deal a few months ago that came up to help a friend, and I'm the type guy, if something needs to be done, I'm all in, But as I got to looking at it a little later, I said, well, there's a little shady side to that possibly that could come about. And I talked to him a little more, and I said, I just don't think I can do that. And another friend knew about it, and he explained to him why I couldn't. He realized why I couldn't. And the other guy, he was kind of like, I hadn't even thought of that. And it's irrelevant what it was, but he uses things that we don't realize, like my not being patient and deciding things a lot of times. I'm all in. Let me help you. Yeah. Or each and every one of us have him attack us in different ways because we're all built differently. But that's his job in so many different areas of our life, is to be subtle and to deceive us. And when he's deceiving us, we don't even realize it. Just like it says there that he was the prince of the air. You breathe it unconsciously. That's a bad word for me to try to say. I'm hoping that's the last time I try to say it tonight. So he's creeping in. And everybody here that as I look out, I know that they know everything I'm saying. But we need these reminders. I'm 53 and I still need these reminders. This little deal that happened over here, it would have been nothing big, but in my conscience, it would have bothered me down the road should it had ended up being a shady deal. And we don't want to be a part of that. We can't have that in our lives. How do we talk? Not 6 months before that, I'm having a talk with this guy to try to help him keep his marriage together. How does that portray me down the road? We have to be careful. That's what this whole lesson's about, is about being careful. Another good explanation for who he is, over in John chapter 10 and verse 1. John 10 and verse 1. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that entereth not by the door into the sheepfold, but climbeth up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. That explains him to the T. He doesn't come straight into us. It made me think of the term shady, and we'll read something later about who God is. But keep that in mind, that God has no part in the shade. He is the light, so we need to remember that. We must also be willing to open and accept correction in our lives. And in that, what we'll read over in a couple of readings in Proverbs, man is pretty good about trying to justify his actions. Riley brought that out in King Saul, trying to blame it on the other folks and different things. And yeah, I kept the best, and the people wanted me to. But we don't want to have fault on us. But we need to look at ourselves and be willing to accept that we're not perfect. We know we're not. And we need to be able to accept that and not be of a high mind. Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 2. 16 and 2. All the ways of man are clean in his own eyes, but the Lord weigheth the spirits. Also in Proverbs 30. Proverbs 30 and verse 20. Similar to that reading. Such is the way of an adulterous woman. She eateth and wipeth her mouth, and saith, I have done no wickedness. People carry about in their daily lives, drenched in sin, drenched in the works that are not clean, that are of darkness. And they say, I'm good. I'm all right. They go about eating and drinking, as it talks about this woman here, with nothing bothering them. We should be bothered by things. It almost makes it sound like this lesson's a deal that's trying to beat us all up, but what it's trying to do is keep us all on our toes, actually. Well, you need to always be alert, watching. Hebrews chapter 12. Hebrews 12. Let's read over there. Isn't that a shame? I mark everything and y'all beat me to it. Hebrews 12 and verse 1 through 2. Says, "Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witness, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience and the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the authority and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down on the right hand of the throne of God." That's a good chapter to read about being able to accept correction in our lives. But as we look there, we need to set aside every weight and the sin. You know, we get burdened down with problems, with sin. We get burdened down with things of this life. And as they weight us down and drag us down, the devil starts his little nibbling game. He starts working on our defenses to try to find a way in. And when I say defenses, I mean just subtle little messages. We have to be careful. He sneaks in, just like it said over in John 10. He's going to sneak in. You don't see the thief coming, but he's coming to steal our soul. That's his whole purpose, his whole job. And the only way to stay upright and to defend in those times of attack is, as it says there, Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, is by studying the Word, is what it boils down to. You know, the Word will prevent us from stepping in to instances like I did or could have done. Maybe the Word prevented me after I pondered on it a little bit. We're going to read about patience a little bit that's thrown in there, and I could use a good dose of that because I run shy on that a lot of times in many different aspects of my life. Everything has to be go, go, go. We can't have a pause in my life, in my day. I don't know why I'm built that way, but I am, and I'm sure there's a good reason for it. And sometimes that comes about, but it's a hindrance sometimes. And like I said earlier, we're all created different. So we all are going to have Satan come at us in different ways. If you would, look over in 1 John. 1 John 4 and 1. "Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world." You know, it's given a lot of talk here on a spiritual aspect, but the devil works on us not only spiritually, but on many other instances in our lives, from our family life to our work life, to our leisure life, to our whatever you want to talk about it. He's hiding around every corner. And the things that come up, we have to try what we're going to get involved with or allow into our or our family's lives. We have to try those things by the scriptures. You know, it makes me think a lot of the scales of justice. I know Brent probably sees that a lot when he goes into the courthouses. But you have to weigh these things out in our lives, and that's where that patience comes in. Over in 2 Peter 1 and 16. 2 Peter 1 and 16. For we have not followed cunningly devised fables when we made known unto you the power and the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, but were eyewitnesses of his majesty. The part I want to get out of that is I'm still trying to point this error at the devil and cunningly devised fables. He comes at us, he came at the disciples from every angle you can think of, the apostles. Flip over in 2 Peter to 2 Peter 2 and 17. 2 Peter 2 and 17. "These are wells without water, clouds that are carried with a tempest, to whom the mist of darkness is reserved forever. For when they speak great swelling words of vanity, they allure through the lust of the flesh, through much wantonness, those that were clean, escaped from them who live in error." We don't want to fall back into these things, that life that we came from. You know, we're all familiar with what's out there. But it's amazing that the things that can start attacking one individual, and everyone here has families, but one thing can start attacking, and if you allow that thing into your life, you justify it and allow it in. Just like we read over in Proverbs, how man justifies things. He does no wrong in his sight. If we justify this thing that deep down inside we know is a sin, it can infect our family before we know it. And yeah, we may come to our senses before it's out of hand. Whatever, and this is a broad range of different things in our lives. But it could get out of hand. We might do away with it in our lives, but what about our family that's done been infected? We need to think about them. Just like I think it was the last one or the lesson before, talking about Lot and the chain of events that he would set up for his family's life and the legacy that he left behind. You know, we need to be very careful what we listen to in this life, and we need to weigh those things as it talked about in 1 John. We need to weigh the things that come at us to make sure, for us and our family's sake. If you would turn over to Romans 12. We just have a couple of readings left. Romans 12, verse 2. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So, we already know that we don't want to let the devil in, but this world tries to drag us into what it sees as right. All of you younger generation here, don't be the follower. Be the leader when it counts. You be the leader. Don't be the follower. We worry about how people look at us and think of us or what they may say, but when you get down the road, it doesn't matter. A little ways down the road, all that's thrown off, and a lot of times when we don't give in to what they want to do, they end up being the ones that look ridiculous. So you got to be the leader. And by the renewing of our minds, we've got to stay in the scriptures. We've got to study. We've got to continually talk to the Lord and have those heart-to-heart talks with him. You know, you can't talk to him too much. He's always ready to hear from us. 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel 22. Second Samuel 22 and verse 29 says here, For thou art my lamp, O Lord, and the Lord will lighten my darkness. I wanted to give something on this from the Old Testament, and then we're going to read one from 1 John as well that's so similar. 1 John. 1 John 1 and verse 5. 1 John 1 and 5. This then is the message which we have heard of him, and declare unto you that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. So when we try to justify shady little things that come up, oh, it's not that bad. It's not that big of a deal. What does it tell us right here? There is no darkness. There is no shadiness in God. Oh, it's such a small thing. I have not found it, but if someone does, I wish that they'd let me know. But there's no place where God or Jesus is talking, or the apostles, that says it's a little sin. A little sin's going to beget a bigger one. There is no such thing as a little sin. It's sin whenever it's wrong, whenever it's against the word. We need to keep that in our minds. One last thing I wanted to share with you. Whenever we read earlier about subtleness, when we read earlier about that, I looked at there had a little deal there where it said what the opposite of that was. And tell me if this doesn't jump out to you and make you think of God. It was one word, the opposite of subtle. That definition it gave, there was one word: harsh. Harsh. The punishment for allowing that sin, giving into it and saying it's okay and letting it infect us, the punishment for it is going to be harsh. We need to keep that in the back of our minds too. We serve a loving God that loves us and cares for us. But we for sure do not want to get off of the path of light and to stumble around in the darkness. And it's an easy path to get led into before you know it. Before you know it, you're not here on Sundays or on Wednesdays. Before you know it, you're not talking to Him as much as you should. It's an easy path to get into. That's all this lesson was about, was to keep us on our toes, to keep us looking the right direction, to not allow the devil into our lives to be subtle. We don't want to have harshness from God. That is a promise that we read about in this book. And when I say it's a promise that I'm saying, that I read, that when we understand how bad it's going to be on that day, wailing and gnashing of teeth, we don't want that, I promise you. We don't know the hearts and minds of those here with us, and there again, I hope that this lesson might have been helpful in some manner. We don't know any that might need the prayers of the church. Prayers do a lot. They do a lot. They give you a lot of comfort. And we don't know anybody that might need to be baptized either. But whatever the case may be, we ask that you might come forward as we sing.